On today's throwback, we're having a look at the NECA Toys Trick or Treat Sam. Fair, Spot technically has already done a throwback on this character, on this figure, but with it being Halloween, and I thought, you know what? I might as well go back and have a look at this figure. This is still one of my favorite figures that I put out every single Halloween. While the figure does things generally pretty good, there are a few hiccups with the figure, something I mentioned with the initial reviews of this guy, and something I'm going to probably touch base on in this video as well. First things first, let's have a look at the display base that comes with Sam. Kind of a grassy, well, more of an asphalt kind of display base. There's a couple of fall leaves that have fallen onto it. It's a pretty nice looking display base. Small, yes, but still really nicely detailed. There are areas, sunken in areas on the display base, one here and one here. I'll show you what that's there for as well. There's a couple of peg holes there too that will hold the figure. Again, I'll show you guys that in a second also. Other accessories that come with Sam, one being a flaming jack-o'-lantern. I would like to carve a jack-o'-lantern to look like this with little slotted notches in it for his mouth and more X-shaped eyes. But there's a little fiery attachment. It can't be removed, just leave it as is. And then he also has a secondary jack-o'-lantern. Again, that same sort of jagged teeth look to it. I feel as if it would want to light up. You know, both of them really, I feel like they could have lit up, but they don't. They're just sculpted jack-o'-lanterns. But there's that little groove section right there that you can take one of the jack-o'-lanterns, you can put the other one right there on either side. And even too, when you notice the display base is curved in such a way that it fits one of the jack-o'-lanterns, or really, for that matter, either jack-o'-lanterns, depending on which one you want to display on the one side. So that's a nice touch. And that's usually how I display it. Actually, I think I usually display it the one with the flames sticking out. I'll put that over there, and I'll usually put the other one right there. So, nice inclusion. He also comes with a sack that he has in the movie that he drags around wherever he goes. And it can sit just like that. And it does actually, because it's curved in like that, you know, the bag doesn't topple over. It doesn't really, though initially and when I did the reviews of this guy, I mentioned that, you know, it doesn't really make any sense for him to have it on his hand. I'll show you guys the reason why for a second, in a second, but there's that little groove there that you can put the bag, you know, if you want. The bag is really cool though. All this like wet, just blood seeping through the this kind of canvas bag that he carries around with him. All things considered, we're actually pretty lucky that NECA released this figure. The fact that Trick or Treat really struggled as much as it did to get a release, and subsequently got released on DVD and, you know, struggled a bit to get it to theaters. The fact that NECA jumped on this as early as they did, I think had they known in advance what ultimately would have come from the movie, they may never ever given us a Sam, which would have been so disappointing. The figure, though, is really cool. The one problem I have with this figure, and it's the same problem I mentioned the first time I reviewed it, same time I mentioned it the second time as well, it's his height. And I guess with NECA, they were going from initial drawing concepts of what the figure was going to, or what the character was going to look like. That maybe original concepts had him a lot taller than what he ended up being in the movie. In the movie, he's really only about there. And I feel like his legs are the right height, but I feel like his torso is too long. And I would say even if you had taken out this much of his body and shrunk him down, that his head be only about, actually really, if his head was about where the neck socket was, and that was as high as the figure was, I think that fits the bill better for how big he appears in the movie. Because he's not this tall. He comes across more stockier, more like a toddler than, you know, someone who looks a little bit taller than what we see in the figure here. He has a onesie pajamas on here. A little trapdoor going on in the back. A little patchwork going on. It's not as vibrant as it is in the movie. In the movie, it's a little more darker, a little more richer in color. But it's still pretty cool. Now, the figure, surprisingly though, has a fair bit of articulation for as old as the figure might be. It does have a bend in the elbow. I wish, sadly though, he wasn't pre-posed up here. That if this arm was kind of like this mirrored over here, I think that'd be much cooler, because ultimately it just means like when you display him, you always have to display him with his arm up. In the one hand though, on the one hand, he's got his broken lollipop, which he does use in the movie. And in the other hand, he's got himself the equivalent of like a Snickers bar, although inside it's not chock full of nougat. No, it's chock full of a blade. There's a little blade going on there as well. You can remove the chocolate bar here, although I'm more in favor of keeping it permanently in his hand, because if not, you will lose that for certain. His face is good, but again, like, I feel like everything is awfully proportioned with him. I have absolutely no complaints at all with the face, but again, like, actually I shouldn't say that. I have one complaint. It's more so the fact that I feel like his head should have been a little bit bigger, but I think that could have been corrected by having the body a little bit smaller. That the head probably fits proportionately to his shoulders, but because the figure just is a little too tall, it just kind of seems out of whack. One of the other things too, and like in the movie, he has the big reveal that what's underneath the mask here. We just go ahead and pop the head off. And actually, when you pop the head off, you want to make sure you pop off the entire socket, basically this entire headpiece. And you'll see inside, it's a clear ball joint. So I would not suggest changing this head out very often. Go ahead and pop the new head on, and you want to apply a little bit of pressure. Unfortunately, this arm here wants to get in the way all the time, it seems. But we go ahead and wiggle this on, wiggle, there we go. And we've got what will be Sam's real face underneath. Face is really cool. It's got that just, it's kind of a cross between a skull. It looks like maybe the offspring of like a pumpkin head, but it looks like a pumpkin and it looks like a skull, basically combined. Very, very cool. In no way, shape, or form I would ever display Sam with this alternate head. But again, I always welcome when NECA takes the time to include extra accessories. At the time, you could have entertained the idea of maybe picking up more than one of these guys. That, you know, the original Sam, you could have kept with the sack head on. And then the other Sam, the other figure, you could have kept it with the alternate head. And you could have had two. But with a lot of older NECA figures, prices like this, prices for this guy have skyrocketed because he was released as a figure that probably a lot of people, I remember when I saw the advertisement or the back card of what this guy was going to be, I'm like, who is this guy? Then of course the popularity of Trick or Treat came out. People loved him. People loved the movie more so once it got to DVD and it became more of a cult following, that a lot of people went back and have started picking up Sam figures. Funko's done a whole ton of Sam stuff. There's a ton of different merchandise for Sam and Trick or Treat that he has become a new poster child essentially for Halloween. No offense to Michael Myers. So unfortunately, a figure like this can be a little bit more on the expensive side. I'm just lucky enough that I was able to pick this guy up when I did. But again, if you want to find him now, your best bet is, you know, aftermarket like eBay. Finally, let's go ahead and peg Sam onto his display base. And we just line up the holes of his feet to the display stand. Apply a little bit of pressure. For some reason, I always struggle for some reason getting him on his display stand. We can go ahead and take his bag. His bag we can just drape to the side. Oops. I think the problem too is that the pegs or the peg holes on his feet probably are just a little on the big side. And we go ahead and, you know what? We will take the smaller pumpkin, put that right there, and the flaming pumpkin we'll put right there. And, well, you've got yourself a spectacular display piece. One of the things also I like to do sometimes when I display Sam, and I bring him out every trick-or-treat, every Halloween, I take the Headless Horseman set from McFarlane's Toys. And if you remember, the horse sat in kind of like a wooded diorama backdrop. Sometimes I take Sam and I put him in that backdrop. It's big enough that it makes him look even smaller, and it's a really great display piece for a character like this, who spends really a lot of his time, you know, in the shadows, not always in the wood area, but, you know, always kind of in the lurking about in the shadows. Still a favorite piece of mine, one of my all-time favorites. Him, as well as a lot of the Michael Myers, they always come out for trick-or-treat for Halloween season. And as it being Halloween today, Spot's going to, of course, have him out on display for today. Today's throwback, we were having a look at the Halloween's new poster child, and we apparently are getting a new trick-or-treat, so I'm super excited for that. We're looking today, though, at the NECA Toys Trick-or-Treat Sam. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more throwbacks and other spots heading your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.